You drive a 12-year-old Honda with a cracked side mirror to a meeting where you're about to sign paperwork worth more than most people's houses. You park it 3 spots down from the building so nobody has to watch you get out of it. The receptionist doesn't look twice. That's the whole point. There's a man you used to work with. Call him whatever you want, you've met a version of him who did the opposite. Same year, similar number landing in his account, and within 4 months he was driving something German, wearing a watch that cost more than your car, and telling anyone who'd listen exactly how he did it. You liked him. Everyone did. He wasn't lying about any of it. He genuinely earned it. He wasn't showing off out of malice either. If you'd asked him why, he'd have told you he worked hard for it and he wanted it to show, and there's nothing crazy about that answer. It's the most normal answer in the world. That's what makes this so easy to fall into. You remember the day the car showed up in the office parking lot. People gathered around it on their lunch break the way people gather around anything new and shiny. He handed out invitations to sit in it. He talked about the financing, the trade-in, the number he'd walked away with, all of it, freely, because why wouldn't he? He'd done well. Doing well was supposed to be shown. Nobody had ever told him otherwise, and honestly, nobody tells most people otherwise. It's the default setting the whole culture ships with. 18 months later, he was borrowing from his brother-in-law to cover a property tax bill. Not because the money disappeared, because the version of him that everyone could see started costing him money he never actually spent. That's the part nobody explains, and it's the part this is actually about. Here's the twist most people never catch. It wasn't the German car that broke him. It was what the German car told everyone else to do next. His mechanic quoted him differently the second he pulled up in it. His cousin's quick opportunity arrived within the month. A guy from the gym who barely knew him pitched him on a crypto play with more confidence than the pitch deserved, because confidence is cheap when you already know the target can absorb the loss without blinking. None of these people were villains. They were just doing ordinary math on new information. The car didn't cost him a payment. It cost him a signal, and the signal got read by every single person who saw it, then acted on. It kept compounding in ways he didn't notice until it was too late to trace back to a single cause. A contractor bid the deck 22% above the neighbor's identical job. A distant relative reappeared after 4 years of silence with the story about a medical bill that needed covering just this once. His own brother started introducing him at gatherings by what he did instead of who he was, as if the job title had quietly replaced the person underneath it. Each of these, on its own, looked like an unrelated event. Stacked together over 18 months, they were the actual bill for the car, invoiced in a currency nobody puts on a loan document. You, meanwhile, kept the Honda. Not because you couldn't afford the upgrade. You could have written the check without checking a second account, but because you'd already watched what the upgrade actually buys, and it isn't what the dealership tells you it buys. The moment they know, the math changes. Not their character, the math. Behavioral economists have a rough name for what you're avoiding. They call it the visibility tax, the invisible cost that shows up the second other people can price you. It doesn't hit you as a single bill. It hits you in 100 tiny surcharges. The contractor's estimate that goes up 11% when he clocks your watch. The salary negotiation your manager doesn't fight as hard for because you clearly don't look like you need it. The friend who starts every hangout with a story about a bill he's behind on, looking at you a beat too long after the number. You ran your own version of the experiment once, without meaning to. 2 quotes. Same fence, same company, 6 months apart. The only difference was what you were wearing when you called. A blazer the first time, an old gym shirt the second. The second quote came in 20% lower. Nobody adjusted the price to your face. It just happened, the way water finds the low point in a room without anyone deciding it should. You noticed the same thing at a dealership once, not buying anything. Just walking through with a friend who was actually shopping. The salesman clocked your friend's shoes before he clocked anything about the car. The pitch that followed had a very specific shape to it. Upsells stacked on upsells, add-ons framed as if they were standard. Because somewhere in the first 10 seconds, a silent decision had already been made about what your friend could be talked into. Nobody trained that salesman to do it consciously. It's just what happens when pricing gets to react to a person instead of a product. The contractor and the mechanic and the salesman are the shallow layer, though. The real cost lives one floor down, in the rooms where money is never mentioned at all. Think about who you tell your actual problems to. Not the surface version, the real one. A marriage that's cracking. A business 3 bad months from folding. People choose who gets that information based on trust, sure, but also, quietly, on a calculation about what you might be expected to do once you know. The more visible your money looks, the more that second calculation creeps into every conversation, until people stop bringing you their real problems and start bringing you their asks instead. Those two things look identical from the outside for about a year, then they don't. Watch what happens to the group chat once one person's visible situation changes. The jokes get a little more careful. Somebody starts prefacing requests with, "I know you're busy, but," which never used to be there before, because now there's an unspoken assumption about what busy is doing for you financially. Plans that used to get split evenly start getting suggested with a line like, "Since you're doing so well," said lightly, like a joke, except nobody actually laughs. They just wait to see if you'll pick up the check. You will, probably the first few times, because refusing feels smaller than the amount of money involved. And that's exactly the trap. The cost was never the dinner. It was becoming the person the group quietly reorganizes around. That was your old coworker's actual loss, the one that never showed up on a balance sheet, not the property tax bill. The version of every relationship he had, quietly replaced with a version where he was a resource first and a person second, and he never got a vote on when that swap happened. You already know why you didn't tell them. Needs versus wants is the phrase everyone uses, and it's true, but it's boring. So here's the version that actually sticks. A scooter gets you to work in the rain exactly as well as an SUV does. The scooter just doesn't tell anyone anything about you while it's doing it. The SUV was never really about the ride. Almost nothing people upgrade visibly is really about the function. It's about the sentence the object says on your behalf before you've said a word. Same with the watch, the vacation photos, the renovated kitchen you post before the paint's even dry. None of these are wrong to want. The mistake is believing they're private purchases just because you paid for them privately. A want, once it's visible, stops being a want and starts being an announcement, and announcements get responses whether you're ready for them or not. Once you notice that, you start noticing it everywhere, including in yourself, which is the uncomfortable part. There's a pull, even now, even having watched what happened to your old coworker, to let people see a little of it. To answer honestly at the dinner when someone asks how the year went. To let the good year show a little, because it felt earned and some small, ordinary part of you wanted somebody to notice. That pull isn't a character flaw. It's just what culture trains into everyone from childhood, that the entire point of doing well is to be seen doing well. Nobody hands you the other option. You have to find it yourself, usually the hard way, usually by watching it cost someone you know. There was a night, not long ago, when you almost said it out loud. A dinner, a good year behind you, someone asking the ordinary question people ask, "How's work? How's it going?" And for a second, the real number sat right at the back of your throat, ready to come out, because some part of you was tired of being modest for an audience that would never know the difference. You watched yourself almost do it the way you'd watch someone else almost step off a curb into traffic. Then you said "can't complain" instead. And the moment passed, and nobody at that table ever knew how close it came to being different. That's usually how it happens. Not a decision. A near miss you don't tell anyone about either. A friend of yours in wealth management put it to you plainly once over a beer in the flattest voice. Nobody ever got robbed for a car they didn't have. Nobody ever got asked for a loan for a lifestyle nobody saw. That's the whole thesis, minus the part that took you years to actually believe. He'd seen it from the other side of the desk for 2 decades. Clients who quietly compounded for 30 years without anyone in their life ever knowing the number. And clients who spent the same 3 decades explaining themselves to people who'd found out. He said the second group wasn't unhappier because they had less. They were unhappier because they'd never once gotten to just have it without an audience attached. So here's what changes once you actually live this way, not as a rule you follow, but as something closer to instinct. The mechanic quotes you fair prices because there's nothing to price you against. The family group chat doesn't have your name attached to a quick opportunity, because nobody's calculating what you can absorb. Your manager fights for your raise on the merits because there's no visible cushion suggesting you'll be fine either way. And the people who actually love you, the ones who'd never ask you for $1, get to keep loving you the same way they always did, without a filter quietly running underneath every conversation, without a number in the room that nobody agreed to put there. It even changes how you experience good news. When something goes well and nobody's watching, the win belongs entirely to you. There's no audience to perform gratitude for, no comment section to manage, no cousin's reaction to brace for. You just get to feel the thing itself, uncomplicated, which turns out to be rarer than it sounds once you've spent any time in the other version. There's a strange kind of peace in a good year nobody else can see. And Domino's keys, it doesn't need defending, explaining, or sharing to be real. It's just yours. The way a private thought is yours before you ever say it out loud. Your old coworker eventually sold the car. Quietly, no post about it, the same way the silence always arrives quieter than the flex ever was. He's fine now, genuinely, better even, but it took him 3 years to unwind the version of himself he'd built in front of everyone, the one that needed feeding every time somebody was watching. He told you once, flat, like a fact that had already stopped hurting on the way out, "I didn't lose the money because I made a bad investment. I lost it because I needed people to know I'd made a good one." You didn't say anything back. There wasn't anything to add. You still drive the Honda. Not because you can't afford something else, but because the Honda buys you something the other car can't. The version of every relationship where you're still just you, where nobody's doing math on your watch before they quote you a price, where the people who matter get to keep showing up for the actual reasons instead of the visible ones. Here's the part that's actually about you. Watching this right now. You're already doing a version of this. Everyone edits what they show. The question was never whether you'd manage what people see. You already do, constantly. The question is whether you're doing it on purpose or by accident, letting culture decide for you because showing more always felt like the default. Look at the last thing you posted, wore, or mentioned that told people more than they needed to know. Ask what it actually bought you. Not how it felt in the moment, but what it cost in the weeks after. Who started asking for what? Who started treating you differently once they knew? If the honest answer is nothing, fine. Some signals really are free. But if you can name even one relationship, one price, one favor that shifted because of it, you already know. The moment they know, the math changes. That was never a warning about other people. It was about which life you'd rather live, the one constantly being priced by everyone who catches a glimpse of it, or the one that's quietly, invisibly, entirely yours.